Greetings. Oh, there it is. Greetings, fellow humans. Today on Doing the Thing podcast with your host, Scott Boersma, is a person who I met this past summer. Her name is Gail Shepherd. She's super awesome. We led this course called Wilderness Leadership together, and she got a chance to facilitate the rappelling in this canyoneering section that we did with these 16, 17, and 18-year-olds who all figured out that they were stronger than they thought they were. So welcome, Gail.
Thanks. What an introduction.
Go ahead.
I mean, that's just a great highlight to start out on, is that memory. It's a good one.
So if you want to go ahead and tell us where you're from, how much outdoor ed you've had, and any other thing that you find pertinent. Where you are in the world right now.
Yeah, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm in the Upper Valley right now in New Hampshire / Vermont, in that area, doing soil microbiology research for the Army. And yeah, I feel like my outdoor experience growing up was definitely more related to family, like gardening and being on what we called the farm, which was a cabin in the woods where my extended family would hunt, cook, and play outside. And so, yeah, I definitely associate my first memories of outdoors were more in that space, but then also have had more experience since then doing more like what I consider the classic like outdoor ed experiences that are more based around like trips and backpacking. I did Venture Crew, which is co-ed scouts as a high schooler, and went to summer camp and did like a Knowles backpacking trip. So was lucky to have a lot of those experiences going into college that also shaped my outdoor rec extracurricular experience, but it wasn't something thought I would do more professionally until college and post-college.
So what was the point when you decided, what was your degree in? English and earth science.
But I was very involved in the Dartmouth outing club, went on a lot of trips with them, ended up leading trips with them, mainly hiking and backpacking, but also got involved with the mountaineering club, which does climbing stuff. I definitely gravitated towards the school because of the outdoors club. I've just kept building more hard skills through them and continuing to use being outside as a way to de-stress. That's my answer.
So what was your first job out of college as far as outdoor ed goes?
Deer Hill. I worked in Spain teaching English for a bit, and then knew I wanted to work in outdoor ed once I got back. Deer Hill was a company that I found through like the Knowles job board, because I got my wilderness first responder the summer before, knowing that I wanted to do outdoor ed after I got back from Spain. And anyways, yeah, ended up choosing Deer Hill. But so yeah, the perspective is that or the asterisk, whatever it is that I'm definitely very new to the industry, but my first trip that I led was with you.
Which is super awesome. I think, as I said before, it was an awesome trip. And did you have a moment that in your like history where you're like, oh, I actually like want to do this as like a job, even if it's just for a summer?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any particular moment. The more I do, the more I want to keep doing it. It's been more like a progression. I guess when I'm in more leadership roles, like leading college freshmen on their orientation backpacking trip, it's affirming to be like, wow, this is going really well. Like maybe I'm actually good at this. Some of it is like slowly prioritizing more and more this work, because there's some phrase about moving towards things that are positive in your life. And this is just one that always has felt that way and continues to feel like a good decision. And I don't know how long that'll be the case. I saw outdoor ed as something temporary in my life because it's hard to make a career out of, and it's not something I expect to be my full-time career. But while it continues to seem like a good idea, I'll keep doing it. And I think it adds a lot. I think I learn a lot from the experiences I've had from my coworkers and the students that are involved. It feels right now like those connections and the skills I'm gaining as a leader and outdoors person continue to feel very worth it for what I'm putting into it. I can't even remember what your question was, but hopefully that answers some of it.
No, that's awesome. For you, it was a progression of like doing outside things, and then you just continue to do outside things, and then you like learn a little bit more, and like just and you meet the person, right, who's like, you're like, oh, well, like that's a job.
Yeah, it's cool to look back on. I think I don't think I've ever felt super confident in being an outdoors person to the point where I was like, I'm so gifted at backpacking or whatever that I should make this my career. I remember on the Knowles course that I did as a 10th grader feeling out of my element in a lot of ways. I had much shorter backpacking experiences before then. It was very challenging at the time. I didn't leave that experience being like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, or I think that I could be an instructor one day. I remember really respecting the instructors, but I didn't see myself being one of them. But yeah, the more time that I put into it, the more I surprise myself in being able to gain those skills. It's a very empowering field to be in.
Do you have a specific story or moment of learning that you've had? Like you've talked about leadership and other people skills that you can share?
With your questions that you sent ahead of time, it had me thinking a lot about one lesson that I remember learning as a 16-year-old. You have to be on top of your own stuff, basically. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. And that's something that, yeah, I guess there's not a specific anecdote to that so much as like, you learn how to, I think the phrase that Deer Hill uses a lot, or like probably a lot of outdoor educators use a lot, is getting your systems down. It's been interesting to learn how to be more efficient in terms of paying attention to what my body needs and things like that, be able to help other people adjust to a very new environment for a lot of people. But what was the question? Lessons?
Just like if you had a moment and that, like, for instance, what you're talking about of getting your systems down, if you have a moment where you're like, oh, this person has their systems down really well and I need to get my systems down really well, or like a thing where you're like, oh, once I figured out X, Y, or Z, I felt like I've really improved on my systems and having that system down so then I could step into that leadership role.
Yeah, I think there's definitely hard skills that are good to develop in terms of the technical side of things, like rappelling and learning. That's been really cool to gain confidence in. Some of it is literally just like getting better at like pooping on a regular schedule in the backcountry, stuff like that. Like I remember my instructor, the primary lead of Knowles or whatever, he was like, yeah, morning coffee, morning dump. He was super into that. And I very much like, I don't know. I just remember being really stressed out about that as a student because you had to have a group of 4 to go. It was like bear country, so it always involved other people. There wasn't privacy at all, and that wasn't really the case at Deer Hill to the same extent because we weren't really in bear country. I think it's hard, especially when you're a young person, to communicate needs that feel super taboo. Instructors that normalize talking about their pooping habits, eating habits, or blisters, create a culture where that's normal, or else things just fall through the cracks. You just have to communicate all that.
Where was your course?
Oh, it was in Alaska. It was in the Talkeetna Mountains.
For those people who don't know, what Gail is describing is what I believe is called an umbrella, where you had 4 of you had to go out. Did you have to have somebody taking care of business in the middle and then the other 3 in a circle around you?
Oh my God,
no, had to do that. There's
be in a group.
Maybe that's some other place where I might be further like tundra environment where you just take care of business in the center because it was like there's nowhere to go anyway. But anyway,
I mean, it was definitely, it's close to that, and that like you just are basically pooping next to each other, but there wasn't that level. I don't think we had an umbrella. Wasn't quite there, but yeah. But there's different techniques with different programs too, like the backcountry bidet. That's not something that I think Deer Hill really does. Anyways, pooping in general, like there's so many different like wag bags with canyons, or like just pooping in a bag. Every program I've done has had a different thing associated with it that's about pooping, and it's just always like, anyways.
It's always super personal and an experience.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the canyons are like that because you have to carry your shit around for days or like the entire trip, basically. So yeah.
Yep, and you get to learn how heavy it actually is.
Yeah. You have to be very intentional about packing. The stakes for how you pack become much higher if you're not intentional about where you're storing your poop. It's just going to end up all over your clothes, and there's only so much water.
Do you remember the bet that it was like, what was it, 5 poops in one wag bag or something like that?
I don't know who won.
I think there was like 3 or 4 where it ended up gapping out.
It was just funny to talk to people, like students, after the fact about what they had been doing with some of that. I feel like it's a specific type of humor, though. People were really proud of how they were using their backpacks. So.
And it was also great, as I was thinking about this, like who is actually pooping versus who are the people who are just going off so they don't get bothered by it or whatever. Because it's very important in the backcountry to know all those things, especially as an instructor.
It can be stressful when you can't poop or need to talk to someone about it, when your body isn't like behaving in the way that you want because it's a very new environment and everything's like already not, a lot of things seem to not be in your control. I think that was tricky for me as a participant. Control becomes very different in the backcountry, relying on people you don't know super well. And then like you also have to deal with like bodily functions, everything.
Do you have a specific, like working with a student or somebody who you were one of the leads on a trip? So you had your students, participants, whatever. Do you have a specific memory of a really powerful moment with one of them?
Yeah, I feel like I'm remembering the conversation I had with a student when you ran to get water. We were really low. The situation seemed very drastic because we were waiting to get picked up from the canyons. The van had gone to the wrong spot and we were out of water. Just a whole situation with having to get water before because it was so far back. I was thinking about that when you sent the questions too, because things like that, like not having water, just changes the intensity of the trip so much when things like that occur. I remember sitting in the sun talking to someone about a really intense experience they'd had that they were working through. It felt really good as someone that has now gone to therapy and has had more like, I don't know, like it doesn't seem like it's within the scope of outdoor ed in a way because not every conversation is about outdoor skills, but it was a really powerful conversation. You're in this intense situation and talking about, I don't know, something like low-key traumatic. Like, yeah, I think that there's definitely boundaries that go into that. And I don't know, like I'm trying to be vague but also articulate at the same time. I think it's the kind of thing that like it feels unique to trips that are that length and that like level of intensity in a way that, you know, being in a classroom, you're not really talking about or teaching a lesson, but yeah, being there to listen felt really rewarding. I think there's a lot of emotion. I was thinking after that trip too that there's obviously a lot of emotional labor that goes into outdoor ed or just things, a lot of people skills beyond navigating and teaching people how to use a stove, but it doesn't always feel like labor. It's just nice to be able to be a mentor. And I really like being in that role.
So did you have a conversation with a student about what was going on with that? Or was it just like that whole moment in general?
Yeah, I had this conversation with a student about some other stuff they were dealing with. I felt very good that I was able to know enough about trauma responses and things like that. I don't know what the word is. I had the background to actually talk about that and feel good about helping process. It's like people aren't, you don't just like leave your entire life at home when you go on these trips, you know. It's like, I think a lot of it is people, like especially 17-year-olds processing their lives while they're in the canyon or whatever. I think being outside in general helps me and others be more present, but it's also, you know, you have a lot of space from your everyday life to reflect on your life. Yeah. And I think that can be really therapeutic for people, even if it's not like wellness therapy.
You felt good to offer your experience and perspective and possibly a tool or two.
And I just like that is an aspect of this work, basically.
It can be. I think that for me, one of the things of like those moments of like you just are out in your own in a different environment, and so everything just is like you don't have those same cues. The ability to process things is always, I feel like, easier, at least from my perspective. So like obviously you've been in the industry for a little bit. What do you think of the industry as a whole? Like of outdoor education, you can also poke into the broader outdoor community, whether it's the seasonal workers of the ski resorts, etc., climbing gym people who come in for a season.
I think the seasonal work thing is definitely a tricky part of it. So I guess it depends like what exactly you're talking about, like what
Just
group.
talk outdoor ed. What do you
Yeah.
think of the industry as a whole? Like outdoor ed.
I love the people. I think people are generally down to earth, pun intended. And yeah, I don't know. It's I think that being an outdoor education, I think can be tricky to not be too political. I think about that as an educator, you have to focus on show don't tell. But I also wonder with climate change and environmentalism, how much responsibility, if any, the outdoor education industry has to actually teach that stuff. If you're talking about climate change, that inherently becomes political. Everything is political, but like, to what extent are you directly engaging with that versus letting the experiences that you're providing to people do the work of showing more about going to Native American reservations. Not everyone that you work with like has the same, like if we're introducing people to like host families and stuff, they obviously feel more compelled to talk about things that are more political, but I don't know, I think I assume that it's healthy for educators to not be like, you should vote for this person. And then the other piece of the outdoor ed industry that just gets me is the housing component, because if you're a seasonal worker that like is doing these trip after trip that where you like it doesn't make sense to be paying rent if you're going to be gone for months at a time. I think what Deer Hills seems to be doing in the future is good, and that they're providing more housing to people working that season, but there's still a long way to go in terms of figuring out what the solution is in terms of like housing for seasonal workers and access to the fact that so many admin even that don't have like health insurance, like there's just a lot of things that need to be addressed in terms of like making sure staff have like a stable like living that like the culture of outdoor ed doesn't really seem to prioritize, or like it just doesn't seem feasible. It's not at least marketed that way. Does that make sense?
It's not feasible to have work a 2-week trip and then have no housing, but for the next week that you don't have a trip, having to bounce around all the time. Is that what I'm?
Either like there's not like the expectation that you like as an employee should be provided, living things beyond like the trip that you're on. Like when you're on the trip, you get food and shelter, but as soon as you're off, it's unclear. I don't even want to talk about that anymore.
Great.
Sorry.
Literally, this is great. I think that no matter what, even if this all ends up in the dumpster, which I'm sure it won't, the act of this whole thing, I think is like worthwhile. To be like, oh yeah, I liked that one's. Oh yeah, like I remember now. I need to be more concise.
Yeah, you're right. I feel like I haven't talked about my experience in outdoor ed in a while. Normally when I do, it's applying to things. Like I did it for the Deer Hill application. In my everyday life, I'm not getting into the weeds about how the outdoor education industry needs to improve and stuff. And I mean, it's conversations that are worth having, even if they're not recorded, but it's nice that it's good practice to like think about what like something like it's good practice to talk about what I care about on a platform in general. So thanks.
Do you have a favorite? What's been your favorite moment in outdoor ed so far?
Oh my gosh.
And it can be a favorite moment or just like the first one that comes to mind. What is a favorite moment? It can be super silly. It can be super serious. It can be somewhere in between.
I mean, there's a lot of super silly moments. I think I don't know, doing Grizzly was really fun in terms of Deer Hill. The challenging parts are always really rewarding. The more I get into climbing, those skills feel particularly rewarding to develop. Like doing my first multi-pitch, those things aren't always tied to outdoor ed specifically, but often the people I'm climbing with had to learn those skills from somewhere, even if it's not always in a strictly outdoor ed context. Yeah. So I think, I mean, like you said at the beginning of the introduction, like being able to help facilitate a rappel, for example, like all that's part really, I just love the more technical, like not mountaineering, but canyoneering, mountaineering, however you qualify that. Those skills have been really rewarding to develop. I remember you saying during the program that 30% or 40%, I forget the amount of like your role as a PL you saw as like helping the leaders, the other instructors develop. And it was really fun to develop in that way.
I would admit that I don't remember. I'm sure I said it definitely is something that I have. And I have no idea. I probably said 30 to 40%. Who knows what the other 60 to 70% actually is. Do you have a favorite place that you've been?
Ooh, in the world?
Yes. In the world.
Whoa. Okay. With the Dartmouth Outing Club, me and 3 other women that were leaders got funding through this like fund basically to like work on our leadership, our outdoor skills in Patagonia for a bit. And so we backpacked around there. I have a very specific memory of we did the Huemul circuit, getting to the saddle, some mountain I'm forgetting the name of, Paso de Viento or whatever. That was my favorite place. And that's a plug for outdoor ed too, because it was through that. Also, there's this creek called Shades Creek in Birmingham that used to go to and still go back to. I grew up collaging and journaling and hanging out with friends there at this boat launch. I talked about this before, but there's like a boat launch where people will go and grill or tube down the river from, and that's a very iconic spot in my life.
So here's the $1 million question. Do you know what you're doing next summer?
No, I'm trying to go back to Deer Hill for another summer. We'll see if it is able to happen. I'm waiting to hear back on what the scheduling will work out to be. But yeah, TBD a little bit, but trying to. So my contract for the job I'm working now, I would have to end it a bit early to work in outdoor ed again, but I probably will do that in outdoor ed, at least in some capacity, for another season before doing some more science communication type stuff. Yeah.
Are you planning any other personal trips to anywhere fun?
I'm going to Red Rocks over the winter after Christmas with some friends from college that I haven't seen since we all graduated, which I'm excited about. And that's the thing that's on the horizon. We'll see what else. But I'm working at, I don't know if I've mentioned this during the podcast, but I'm working at this climbing gym that just opened called The Notch in the Upper Valley, plug. And yeah, that's been really fun to be a part of and to contribute to more. And I just helped them start a Slack channel, but I'm excited to hopefully do more with them too. And yeah, I just am so pro like climbing gym role in community. Like, yeah, so I'm excited to see that continue to develop too. And I'm teaching like 30-year-olds how to climb right now, which is super fun.
That's super awesome.
They're
barely stand up. Here's a wall and I'll go up.
They're like, climb through this hoop, go left. And they're like, what? Which way? It's just funny to have the context of what it was like to be like 6 years old. And I like just totally forgot there was a time where I didn't know where left was. It's awesome.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you have a fun time at your current job, and hopefully we'll cross paths again at Deer Hill next summer.
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing the podcast and looking forward to hearing a bunch of cool people's stories in the future. What? Is it still recording? Was it recording?
Yeah, it still is. Don't worry. I meant to stop the recording, and then I hung up.
I think that should be part of it.
I feel like there needs to be something else that was said in there, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is good. You did a good job.
There was a moment where I was like, oh, I think you and I have a similar style. At the end there, it was a very straightforward question. Like, are you going to do outro next summer? I was like, and you like went of like the one word to a lot of words. And I definitely am always on a lot of words. You and I were pretty close as far as where I would also, where it's like, oh yeah, well, I need this to happen, this to happen. I'll probably do this. And it's like, yeah, most likely, and like where I was more looking for, and then moment, like, oh yeah, most likely I'll do that. And it's like, again, totally fine and just hilarious note and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I need a concision, man. Oh, that was not, but anyways.